My oh my, look at all this stuff. Hey guys, Angry Monkey here with... This is a different kind of video. I mean, none of this is new if you guys are... if you guys are already familiar with my channel. But I want to do something a little different today. A different kind of video. So, back in January, I think... I got together with, well, kinda got together with JoeSchmmo because he wanted me to give him a list of tips for video game collecting, and I thought, you know what, I kind of want to do that too. So I'm going to combine the tips that he had on his video along with my own tips, and of course I'll credit him on the ones that were his versus the ones that were mine, or mix of both, or whatever. Yeah, so if you're watching this video, you probably have some interest in video game collecting, or maybe you'd see like a collection like this and you're thinking like, oh man, how did you get started? I mean, I've gotten that question a lot of like, teach me your ways, sensei, or something like that. I'm making up the sensei part, but I actually have been asked several times of like, how do you get this? How did you get all that? How did you get started? And how do I get a collection like this? So I figure, you know what? Let's make a video about that. So I'm going to move my tripod, and I'm going to come over here, and we're just going to set up at this wall of games. There's visually, there's not going to be a lot going on outside of, like I said, a wall of games. But I wrote down a list of, I don't know, different tips and stuff that I've come up with and that JoeSchmmo came up with, and maybe this will be helpful to you in starting your own collection. I mean, maybe, let's see if I can... Is it this one? Nope, that is not the right one. There we go. Yeah, because I mean, I like to think that I know what I'm talking about when it comes to tips on video game collecting. I have in my collection, if you look at this wall and you look at my collection of Game Boy and Game Boy Advance and DS and all that stuff, my list shows that I have 942 games currently. So I'm close to 950. I'm getting close to 1,000. So again, I like to think that I know what I'm talking about when I give you guys some tips. So some of the stuff I came up with is make a list to avoid duplicates. And also be sure you update that list regularly. Because there are so many times where I forget to update a list, it's a few months old or something, and I check my list and I don't have it. So it's always good to make sure that you actually have that list and keep it updated. So I have a list on my computer that I update regularly. And I also have an app on my phone called GameEye. And I know that's... There we go. And, I mean, this app is really nice because you can log in all your games. They have a search feature. So if you're like, do I have that Mario game? You type in Mario, and you can see all the Mario games in your collection. You can also break it down by console. So if you're looking at a wall of... where's NES? Yeah, if you're looking at a wall of NES games, you can narrow it down to all your NES games. Oh, I still have Mario on there. Yeah, so like you can see, like, okay, these are all my NES games, for example. So if you're looking at a wall of NES games, do I have that one? Do I have that one? GameEye helps with that. GameEye, you can also add a a wish list feature on there, so that way if there's some games that you know you're looking for, you can check your wish list, and so that way you're like, what am I looking for? What did I come in here for? Oh, that's right, I'm looking for this game. And you can see if they have it. So again, GameEye. That's how it's spelled. It's a free app, and it's really helpful. This is not sponsored by GameEye in any way. This is an app. I was at a retro game store back in 2020, I think, and I had a list on my phone, and there was a guy that worked there. He's like, "Have you ever heard of GameEye?" And I'm like, "No, what is that?" He showed me it, and I'm like, "Oh, that's a really nice app." I mean, you got pictures on there. You can see on how much games are worth. You can catalog on how much you paid for it to see if you got a good deal on it. And it regularly updates, like maybe once a month. It'll update with like what the current value of those games are, so you can see if what you're looking at is a good deal or not. I mean, there's price charting and all that stuff too as other options. But yeah, like I said, it is important. I cannot stress this enough. Have a list on your phone, so that way when you're at a store, you can look at it, pull it up. Okay, cool. Whether you use GameEye or you just have like a notes sheet or an Excel sheet or something, just something for you to reference, so that way you don't get duplicate games, because video games are expensive and they keep getting more expensive. I mean, they get cheap and then they get stupid expensive. So just a way to avoid those duplicates. But if you have a big collection like this, duplicates are going to happen. Either you forgot to write down your list, or you can't see it. Like you're looking for it, and I don't see it. Okay, well, I guess I don't have this game. I'll go ahead and buy it, and then you get home and you find it sitting on your shelf. That happened a few years ago. I bought it was Batman Arkham City on PS3. I was looking for that game. Like, okay, next time I'm at a game store or whatever, next time I'm at a flea market, I'm going to look for Arkham City. And I'm like, oh, cool, they finally have Arkham City. I can finally buy that game. I get home, and it was already on my shelf. A game I didn't even know I had, and I still was in the mindset of looking for that game. And I already had it. So, basically what I'm getting at, it's going to happen. If you have a big collection like this, it's hard to remember what all you have, especially when you have as many consoles as I do and as many games as I do. You're going to make that mistake. Just don't be discouraged. I've bought so many duplicate games over the years, and I forget to update Retro Game Treasure on some of that. And I get a game, I'm like, oh, oops, I already have that game. And I forgot to write that down. In fact, like this right here, this is just one time at one point earlier this year, I had a huge stack. Look at that. All those are duplicate games. Now, a couple that JoeSchmmo had was to check for alternate covers. I don't have any examples of what he's talking about. So you'll have to watch his video on that to have him explain to you a bit more on what he's talking about there. But he says to watch out for alternate covers. I think one of the things he's talking about is you have like the greatest hits version versus the regular version. So just kind of be on the lookout for that there's two different versions. I personally don't really see a difference between the two. I mean, like, to me, I don't care if I have the greatest hits version or the regular. But there are some people who do prefer the original versus the greatest hits. That's kind of more of a personal choice. And he also says to, and I mean, I definitely agree with this, check the other consoles, if other consoles have it as well. He's thinking of the mindset of, if you want to have every Xbox game and every PS2 game, and you're looking for it on both consoles for some reason, just be aware that it exists. Whether it's just be aware that it exists so that way you can avoid that, like what I always talk about on Retro Game Treasure, or if you're like, well, I know I've got Star Wars Battlefront on PS2, but I also want it on original Xbox for some reason, just be aware that that version exists. Now, I am fine with having only one version. Like, I've got Star Wars Battlefront on PS2. I don't need it on original Xbox. But I know that in his case, I sold him, I think it was Fallout 3 or one of the Fallout games, and apparently I had a copy on both PS3 and Xbox 360, and he's like, yeah, I'll take that game. I'm like, okay, which version? He says, both. Okay. So, I mean, it's all up to whatever your personal collection is on that. I mean, I say that just having one version is enough for me, so I don't see me ever getting Battlefront on original Xbox since I have it on PlayStation, but everybody has their own interest on collecting. Now, there are some exceptions, like I bought the Wii version of Dead Rising because apparently, I haven't played it yet, but that is supposedly very drastically different than the 360 version. So I thought, you know what? It's cheap. I'll go ahead and get it just to have it. I'll probably play it someday on the channel, maybe. Or like, I don't know, GameCube versus Game Boy, or I think there might even be some differences between the Super Nintendo version and the Genesis version on like Aladdin and Lion King. Like some of those, supposedly there is a slightly different, like people say, oh dude, it's a completely different game. I don't know. I have the Genesis version for both of those, but I think I remember playing the Super Nintendo version with my cousin back in like 2000 or something, because they had a Super Nintendo. So I don't remember what the difference was, if there was one, but apparently there is some differences in some games. So, I mean, I guess in that case, that's fine if you want to have multiple versions. I mean, like I said, this is all up to you. I mean, if you want to have every single Xbox game, every single PS2 game, whatever, I mean, that's cool. That is all up to you. Another thing that Joe says is also there are special and limited editions of games too. So like just be aware that those exist as well. So like those are mostly, I guess, like limited runs, pre-order, stuff like that. And if there's a game that you think that you'd like, or it's part of a series that you love, there might be a limited edition of that. And I mean, if you're able to afford it, go for it. I definitely recommend that over just the base version. But again, that is all up to what you want for your collection. And of course, it's okay to have a small collection. I mean, I didn't get all this overnight. I didn't even get this in the first 5 years of having video games. Like, from... I didn't get my first Game Boy until, like, 2002. And I didn't get my GameCube until, like, Christmas of 2003. And I didn't get my next game console... I didn't get my next TV console until 2008, which was the Wii. So for the first 5 years, my game collection, at least for TV stuff, was pretty much just that. And not even all of those, because some of those I've gotten a lot later. So let's just say my game collection would be like roughly 2 of those, like Section 1, Section 2. That was probably my entire GameCube collection, basically. So basically, just don't be discouraged if you have a small collection. Small collections are actually pretty cool because, like, you look at that, and those are like their favorite games. You know that all those games that they have are well-loved, personal loved games for their collection. Whereas something like this, yeah, it's cool, but I mean, when you think about how many games I've actually played, is maybe a tenth of what I have here. There are some games that I bought and I haven't even touched yet. There's a couple of these that are still sealed, by the way. I mean, I plan on playing them at some point, but I just haven't yet, and that makes me feel bad. But yeah, so that's just a small little thing of just something I thought of. It's not in my notes, but just something I thought of. Now, the next one I want to say, if you see an older game, and even if it's a little bit pricey, if you can afford it, go ahead and buy it now. Because that $50 Super Nintendo game might be $70 next year. And if you kind of want it, I mean, I kind of want it, but I'm not sure. If you can afford it, buy it. Because there's a lot of times where I've thought, I don't know, maybe I kind of want it, but I don't know, I probably shouldn't. And you leave, and you think about that game, you're thinking, maybe I should have bought it. Then you come back and it's gone. So, that's, I don't know, if you're able to afford it, and it's a game that you're like, yeah, I kind of want it, or yeah, I'm definitely interested. If you can afford it, buy it. That's something else I want to say. And I also want to reiterate on the $50 SNES games. I remember I bought Super Metroid on the Super Nintendo for I think $25. And let me just check Game Eye real quick because I'm curious. Well, it turns out I didn't have Super Metroid logged into Game Eye. Okay, so now I have 943 games because I just added Super Metroid, which I've had since 2010 or 11, something like that. And I paid $25 for it. Just the game by itself right now is $76. So, yeah, I mean, granted, I'm talking about 11 years versus 1 year, but the demand for these retro games are getting pretty expensive. So, again, if you're able to afford this game, go ahead and get it, because you might regret missing out on it later. Now, I mentioned if you can afford it. So the next thing I want to talk about is make a budget. And make that budget based on your paycheck. So, I mean, naturally, I know that there's a lot of people out there that won't be able to afford dropping $100 or $200 because, I mean, life. Unfortunately, life happens, and like I said, this stuff's expensive. But I definitely recommend, if you haven't set up some kind of budget, I mean, make a budget for everything else in your life. Set aside, okay, this much is for bills, this much is for food, this much is for gas, and this much is set aside for entertainment stuff, whether that's movies or video games or whatever. Set aside a budget and stick to that budget, or at least as close as you can. Whether that's, I'm going to set aside $100 a month or $50 a month or whatever your budget is. I mean, stick with it. I mean, you're going to go over. I go over pretty much every month. Like, I'm probably like $50 over budget in the month of April alone. So, I get it, but like I said, just try to stick to your budget. Whether you want to say, I'm going to do $100 a month, or if you want to save up, be like, all right, I'm saving up for this, so I'm not going to spend money on any video games because I want to spend something on something a little bit more expensive. That's cool too. So what I do, I think I have like $150, maybe $170 dollars a month on entertainment stuff, just because my job allows that. Plus, I don't have a lot of expenses since I'm still living with my dad. But anyway, so I have that. And I also set aside another $100 a month to basically save up for game consoles, which is one of the reasons why I'm able to buy as many game consoles as I have. Like, when I got my PS5, so let's go over here. There we go. That was kind of probably a little jerky movement and everything. But when I got my PS5, a guy said that he had a PS5 for sale, and I said, I have the money. And so I was able to just give him the money right then and there. Earlier this year, I bought a Sega Saturn, and I mean, the Sega Saturn was, I was it 125 or 150, something like that. I was able to drop $130 because I set aside that money for the Sega Saturn. A few of these other consoles, enjoy the ceiling, huh? Yeah, like these consoles over here. The Telstar was another example. It was either 100 or something. I think it was 100. And I was able to just drop that money right then and there because I saved up for it. So that's what I'm getting at, is whether you want to save your money and spend it all at once, or budget every month. I mean, whatever works for you, but definitely have something set up. Now, something that Joe said was check out Five and Below stores and dollar stores, which I never even thought of that until he mentioned that. But they actually do have a small selection of video games in there. They're sealed, and you can get them for like $5, $10, whereas other stores, if they have it, might be like $20. So you can definitely get some good deals there. And Joe says that they might even have a collector's edition. Ask him about the Starlink collector's edition box that he has for Xbox One. He's got that on his curio cabinet. Ask him about that, which he found at a Five and Below type of store. Other places you could check is flea markets and thrift stores, antique malls. Where I'm at, there's a lot of antique malls around. And there's actually some pretty good flea markets too. I mean, flea markets are hit or miss. You might go to a flea market and find absolutely nothing, just junk. But sometimes you might find a flea market that's got some good booths set up and has like tables of video games or whatever. You might find some good stuff there. And also negotiate those prices. So if you're like, hey, I found this game for $10. Is that the best you can do? Can you take $7 for it? And they'll be like, yeah, I could do $7. And then you save $3 right there. So definitely negotiate your prices, because you might get a few dollars off. And hey, I mean, you can't beat that unless they say you can have it, which I guess that could happen. But saving a few dollars is definitely a good deal there. Joe Schmo says pawn shops are another good place. You might be able to get some bundle deals. And he also says yard sales, which I forgot about yard sales too. But I mean, you have a table set up and people are just trying to get rid of that stuff, and you'll be like, hey, I'll take this whole box of games for $25 or something. They'll be like, take it, just because they don't have to deal with it anymore, and they found somebody who's interested. So yeah, you might get a really good deal on that. Another one from Joe: establish relationships with people in the community. Like, make friends with the pawn shop or the flea market people. Like, leave your number with them. So if you're like, hey, I'm a video game collector, here's my number. If you come across a batch of retro games, can you give me a call? I'd love to look through them and maybe buy some of them, buy the whole collection, stuff like that. That was another one that Joe said, just to kind of, again, just establish friendships with the community. Also, make friends with other people in the video game community. Like, I'll use Joe for example. I sold him all those duplicate games that were in that picture, and then he lets me know when he gets a batch of games. Be like, hey, here's some new games I bought that I'm going to sell. Are you interested in any of these? And I'll be like, oh yeah, I'm interested in that one. Be like, okay, cool. So I mean, it's really cool to establish friendships like that with people in the community, whether that's online people or in your local community, whatever that looks like. Definitely, like, establish those friendships, establish those relationships with people, so that way when they see something, they'll be like, Angry Monkey would love that. I'm gonna give him a call. I'm gonna message him. It's just, yeah. That's another one as well. One that I've learned a few times. is don't judge a game by its cover, but at the same time, do. So there's a lot of games that look like they'd be really good, and they aren't. Which those are usually movie-based games. An emphasis on most movie-based games are pretty awful. It's basically just a quick money grabber. You're excited about this movie coming out, so you buy a video game, and they're trash. But at the same time, if you find something that looks interesting, and if it's cheap, again, budget allowing, go ahead and check it out. It might be your new favorite game. I'm trying to think of some examples off the top of my head of some games that I'm like, oh, I've never heard of this game, but it looks pretty cool. I can't think of any off the top of my head. Oddworld, Munch's Odyssey. I mean, I played that at a friend's house back in like 2003, but I mean, it's a weird game, but it's fun. And it's not really a game that a lot of people talk about. I mean, there are some that are definitely more obscure than that, but I mean, Munch's Odyssey is no Halo, basically, is what I'm saying. So just because you've never heard of a game doesn't mean it's bad. Not every game is going to be a Mario or a Zelda or a Halo or something. There's a lot of great, really obscure titles. And, I mean, so don't pass up a game because you're like, I've never heard of that. It's probably not that good. It might be good. Just, it got overlooked because it's surrounded by a bunch of really big titled games that came out maybe around the same time or the same year, or just on a console that has so many great games for it that some of the lesser known titles are overlooked. But they might still be really good games. So don't pass up a game just because you've never heard of it, because it might be your new favorite game for that console. Who knows? Before leaving the store, inspect the disc. So, I'm just pulling a random game off the shelf. Inspect the disc. So, a few things here. I mean, naturally, check the condition of it. Make sure that there's no scratches on it. Hold it up to the light, and if you can see through the disc, then there might be some problems with it. But if it has some light scratches on it, it's probably alright. But if you got some deep scratches, if you have some cracks on it, I would avoid those because they might not even play in the first place. Something that Joe says on that same subject is check for CIB, which is complete in box. So again, using this in Television Lives, I mean, you open it up, and I don't know what this thing is. I mean, it's just some kind of promotion thing for movies. But this is an example of a CIB. You have the game, of course. You have the original manual, and you have the original case. So that's an example of a CIB game. Now, some newer games, like on the Switch, PS4, stuff like that, they might not have a manual to them. Now, like, I got Arceus on the table here, Pokemon Arceus. Outside of these, this is a CIB for a Switch game. I mean, it's just the game in the case. So, I mean, just kind of be aware of what CIB looks like. For PS3 and Xbox 360 and back, to, I guess, PlayStation 1, CIB would have a case and the disc and some kind of manual. But, again, newer consoles might not have a manual, but that's okay. They might still be CIB. You also might find some kind of advertisement in there for some new game coming out, or that in Television Lives case, some kind of advertisement for movies. I don't know if that was actually part of it or if that was something that somebody stuck in that case, but yeah. Anyway, another one from Joe is to check Amazon for flash deals. That is out of focus. I'm sorry. There we go. Because there's a lot of times, like, I don't know, every week, every other week, something like that, there might be a random batch of games that are half off or something, and just check them regularly. I don't do that, but I don't know why I shouldn't or don't, because you can find some really good deals through these flash sales. Um, and you also might find some sales on like Epic Games, which is kind of like a Steam kind of thing. You might Steam's another example. You could find some discount. Steam's got stuff on sale all the time, and Epic Games does, and a lot of stuff for free. Even like every Thursday, they announce a new game that's free for the week. So that's some places that you can try as well for some severely discounted or even free games. He also says, this is another one from Joe, check eBay for lots, as long as it's within your budget, of course. Because eBay has a lot of lots all the time where you would have like a collection of 10 games or 5 games or whatever, and you might be able to find, and you'll be able to get them all together. I made that mistake a few years ago where there was a guy that had like 12 Super Nintendo games. Earthbound was one of them. And I'm like, hey, I'll buy Earthbound by itself. And he's like, no, I'm selling these all together. And I'm like, I'll pay the price of Earthbound that you're charging for all the others, and I'll just pay that. I'll buy Earthbound for the price of all of them. He says, no, they're all together. I don't know why I didn't just do that and then sell the other games later. I was kind of a dumb 20-year-old or whatever. I kind of regret that because Earthbound's like $200, $300 now. And it was like $120 for Earthbound, Super Mario World, Link to the Past, and a bunch of stuff like that. And I'm like, oh, I already have all those games. But anyway, I'm kind of rambling on at this point. Yeah, so check eBay for some lots. You might find some really good deals there. Now, the last couple I have are more for when you have a collection, not necessarily buying. So always keep your games in the case when they're not in the system. This helps keep them from getting scratched up, and I also don't recommend leaving them in the console when the console's not on. So, I'm just going to bear with me here. So, I'm kind of breaking my own rule if we were to come over to my GameCube. Because if you look in that GameCube, Kirby Air Ride's in there. I don't recommend that. I mean, I do it for the GameCube because, I mean, just that, you don't need power to get the game out for the Saturn, the GameCube, the Dreamcast, the PlayStation. All those are fine just because you don't need power to get the game out. But something like these, PS3, PS4, I mean, you got to turn the game on to like eject the game, and I don't know, I just imagine if you were to pick up that game, I just imagine if you pick up that console with the game in it, I don't know, I just imagine the game's getting all scratched up in there. So again, just put the game back in the case when you're not using it. Don't leave them face up on the table, because they'll get scratched up, or you'll bump the table, it falls on the floor, it might shatter or something, or break if it's a hard floor. I don't know. It falls on the carpet and your dog walks on it or something. Fortunately, that hasn't happened to me, but that's a scenario that I can think of. So, or kids. Ooh, man, don't get me started on that. If you have small kids in the house, they'll step on it or they'll pick it up and what is it, and they'll like stick it down their pants or something. I don't know. It's kids being kids. Leave the discs in the case when you're not using them. Also, I would suggest if you have kids, keep the games out of reach for them, because I mean they could definitely just grab a game and then throw it across the room or break it in some way. But that's kind of like a side tip. And the last one that I want to mention is be mindful of who you lend your games to. Will they treat your games as well as you do? And do you trust that you'll see that game ever again? So I've got a couple stories about that. There was a kid that lived down the street from me, and this is going back to like 2003, 2004 maybe. And he didn't have any video game consoles yet at all, like any Game Boys or anything. And I had a Game Boy Advance. I might have had the SP by then, I don't know though. But I had the original Game Boy, and I had a copy of Red version that didn't save. So I wasn't too heartbroken about that because it didn't save. But I said, hey, why don't I give you this Game Boy and hold on to hold on to Red version until you get your own game, and then you can just give me back Red version. No rush on it though. Well, he eventually just kept the Red version, which again, I wasn't heartbroken because it didn't save, and I got my own copy that does save. In fact, it still saves, at least as of last year. I still have a save file on there. Another example was when there was this little girl that, I don't know, like 10 maybe, or 8 or something. This is going back to 2006, something like that. Anyway, she really enjoyed Donkey Kong Land on Game Boy, and I had my SP, I had my DS, I have the Game Boy player. I didn't need a Game Boy Advance, so I said, you know what? You really like this Donkey Kong game. I let her borrow the Donkey Kong game, but I gave her the Game Boy. I never saw that game again. A few years later, I decided, you know what? I should buy myself another copy because it's been like 4 years. I don't think I'm ever seeing that game again. So, again, be mindful of who you lend your games to because you might not see that game ever again. I let somebody borrow Twilight Princess on the Wii like 3 years ago. There's still a gap on that shelf. I mean, I'm not too heartbroken because I've got it on the Wii U, like the remastered version. But at the same time, like I would like to see my copy of Twilight Princess on the Wii come back to me. So I'm sure that it's well taken care of. I just got to remind them of like, hey, by the way, you still have that game. So kind of like the only people I really let borrow my games now is basically Kajinama, who basically sold me a bunch of games anyway. And I mean, he's part of the channel. And like he's borrowing, is it Army of Two that he's borrowing, or Armored Core? Armored Core is what he's borrowing. And I said, oh yeah, because I trust him enough that he'll take care of that game because he has a lot of games too. I trust that he will take care of that. So again, be mindful of who you lend your games to. So yeah, I think that's all my tips. I mean, I looked through my list and I think I got them all. I'm sure there's going to be others that I'm forgetting about, but this is a pretty good start, a pretty good list in my opinion of just tips that I've learned from video game collecting. I mean, I guess if you were to count my original Game Boy, I've been collecting games for 20 years now. Even if you were to take into account just TV consoles, that's 2003, so that's 19 years. I really started picking up multiple consoles like 2010, I think. And that's when I started getting like some of the retro games, like the NES games, the Super Nintendo games. So, I mean, for one, I got lucky on those because of the demand wasn't quite there yet. Like, I got my NES for like $35 or something, and it's going for like 50 or 60 now. And I'm talking about the console itself. So I kind of got lucky on some of that. But, yeah, I've been collecting for a while. And, so that's just some of the stuff I've picked up in the last 15 years or 20 years, wherever you want to say that I started collecting games at. So that's just some of the stuff that I've learned. And if you have other questions or whatever, just comment in the comments, and I'll let you know I'll try to answer them the best I can. I also provide a link to Joe's Twitch and YouTube as well. So that way, if you want to, and I'll also send a link to his tips video because he words things a little bit differently than I did, and so I'll send you a link to his as well. So that way you'll get double the information for how to start a video game collection like this. If you're into that. I'm assuming you are if you're still watching. But anyway, thank you for watching. That is all I have to say, but don't forget to hit that subscribe button and hit that bell so that way you're notified when another video game video comes out, whether that's a Let's Play episode or an unboxing video or another thing like this, something different that I just wanted to do. I've wanted to do this for a while. Also, I have a Facebook, so you can follow me on Facebook. I have an Instagram, which I haven't posted in like 2 months, but I have one. You can follow me on there, where I post pictures of video game stuff, mostly stuff from my collection. And I also have a Discord, so that way you're like, hey, I want to join your Discord. I'll be like, cool, here's an invite, and we can nerd out and talk about anime or video games or Pokemon or whatever. Yeah, whatever you feel like talking about. I'll be happy to carry on the conversation with you. But until then, thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.